Hello everyone, it's your buddy Sven here again, and today we'll be discussing the Valkyr Warframe. As her name implies, she's kind of the Valkyrie Berserker type frame of this game. She's an absolute brute, complete just melee savage, incredible frame to play. I know my frame is unranked at the moment, but I play with a friend who uses Valkyr a lot, so I know the extent of her abilities, and I just know how powerful this frame is. So we're going to start off with, the boring statistical stuff, get that out of the way, then we can get to the fun. Her stats are somewhat basic. Her health is 100, starts off at 100, gets to 300 at rank 30, so she has a sizable health pool. Her shield capacity, though, is very low, only starts at 50 and only gets to 150 at rank 30. That's really, really darn low, especially for a melee-focused frame. Her power is 100 and that goes to 150 at rank 30, which kind of puts her in the boat with Mesa, which, she just doesn't have that much power, but that's alright because she doesn't necessarily use a whole lot. Her sprint speed is a 1.1, which is actually the exact speed of Mesa and a few other frames of the game, meaning she's fairly nimble. She's definitely a little bit faster than your average frame. The two things that I like to point out, and the two things that she really excels at, her stamina pool is 150 compared to the standard 100, meaning that, she has an extra third of, she has an extra, 50 stamina on top of standard frames. And her armor. Valkyr has the highest armor rating in the game at 600 armor. Now you could be asking me, okay, so what does the armor do? There's a whole calculation, but for Valkyr, 600 armor full-on negates 2/3 of incoming damage, meaning that she will only be taking a third of what enemies deal. That is a huge deal because with her, especially with her low shield capacity and not necessarily, skyrocket of a health capacity. Now, to go into her abilities, which we all know and love, the abilities, that's always the fun part. Her first ability is Ripline, where she just hurls a hook out there, and if she grabs an enemy, she pulls the enemy to them, the good old scorpion get over here. And then, if it hits terrain, she launches herself to the terrain. The important thing to note with that is that it will not always pull the exact distance. It won't just pull you right up to the hook. So if you're trying to cross a huge gap, and say, for example, you get the hook to hit, it won't drag you across the entire gap, and you'll probably just plummet to the reset point, and that's unfortunate, but that's just the case. Now, the strength, duration, range, and efficiency, the nitty-gritty, how do my mods work with this? Strength increases the damage of Ripline, so when you hit the enemy, it does a lot of damage to start, actually. So the strength actually really feeds off of that, and you can one-shot enemies with Ripline if you know how to use it, and it only costs 25 energy, meaning it's very, very efficient. Duration has no effect on it because it's just a line that you shoot forth, and it's not really something that really can fix around with its duration. Range increases the cast range, which I'm pretty sure means you could just throw your hook out there and it goes further and further depending on your range, or shorter and shorter depending if your range gets impacted. And efficiency, like everything else, will handle the cost, and it will lower the cost depending on the higher efficiency and raise the cost depending on if your efficiency gets lowered. Now you have Warcry. Warcry costs 75 energy, which is a little bit higher than most second skills in the game. You achieve this at a Valkyr rank 3. Now, what this does is it boosts the friendly move speed while slowing your enemies. This is important to know because it also increases the attack speed of your friends, not just the movement speed. It's a very solid ability for Valkyr, makes her actually have somewhat of a utility role in addition to her, just dealing tons and tons and tons of damage. Now, the strength, duration, range, and efficiency, all 4 attributes affect Warcry. Strength affects the slow and bonuses, so the bonus speed to your friends and the slow to your enemies is increased or decreased with strength, and also depending if you're a friend or an enemy. Duration increases the duration of Warcry. That should be fairly obvious. Range increases the radius/range of it, which again should be somewhat obvious. And cost, of course, is reduced by efficiency. Next up, you have her number 3 skill, which is Paralysis. Paralysis costs only 5 energy and is a highly spammable skill. However, what Paralysis does is that it drains 33% of your shields to stun and damage nearby enemies. What you do is you stomp the ground and you let out a yell. It's very, very intimidating, especially if you're fairly new to Valkyr. It really makes you feel like a warrior. But again, so the strength, duration, range, and efficiency of this one, strength increases the damage that you deal, duration has no impact, range increases the radius of your paralysis, and efficiency, of course, lowers the cost. Now, what everyone knows Valkyr for is her number 4, Hysteria. Hysteria costs 100 energy, and this just turns her into a whirling ball of death. This recently took a little bit of a nerf, and I'll detail the nerf later, but it's still an extremely viable skill. What you do is you unleash these energy claws that you have on your wrists, which maybe you can see around here, and I'll highlight them later when we go into the loadout options. But during the duration of Hysteria, Valkyr becomes entirely immune to status effects, and not only status effects, but she's absolutely immune to damage of all sorts. Nothing gets through that, and it's pretty insane. And in addition to this complete immunity, say for example you pop this when you have 0 shields, 30 health. You're on the brink of death. You pop Hysteria, you heal a portion of the damage that you take when you attack with the energy claws that you sprout. It's an amazing ability. It can take her from the brink of death to absolutely taking out waves upon waves of enemies. However, the nerf that came in with her is the fact that this used to be an absolute, no downside skill. However, they had to add a downside because people were just absolutely rocking with Hysteria. When this expires, if an enemy is within about 5 meters of her, which is a pretty close range, Valkyr can get out of that. If you get out of it, there's no downside, but if an enemy is within 5 meters of her, she takes 7.5% of the total damage that she absorbed while in Hysteria. That means that she can actually kill herself after Hysteria. So, depending how you manage it, it can be one last hurrah, or it could be a tool that saves your life, and then you get out of there scot-free. Now, the strength, duration, range, and efficiency. We all know what the efficiency does. There's no range impact. Strength increases the damage, which we can all see coming, and duration increases, well, duration. So now to go to possible loadout options for her, and I'll actually point out the claws come out of these nice little silver parts, which are wired to her wrists. If you want to take the time, you can look into the Valkyr backstory. It's very, very interesting. It involves the Corpus if you're fans of them, and it's just, she has a really good backstory even among other frames. So my personal loadout with her is pretty standard, and you've seen it on a few of the other frames. I play with the Soma, personal favorite primary weapon, but Valkyr is very flexible in terms of how you want to do her loadout. Given the fact that a lot of builds will usually focus around Hysteria, and that's where you'll be doing a lot of your damage, but if you want to try to mess around with other stuff, you're going to want a loadout like most other frames. So I have the Soma here personally, but you can do something like the Warframe, which is a shotgun. You can take a bow like the Dread. You can take a sniper like the Vectis. You could do absolutely anything you want to with her. Again, I kind of just took, my favorite sidearm, which is the Merlock, but you're welcome to do anything like the Despair, which are some nice little kunai, the Dex Furus, the Gamma Core. It's all your personal preference. The Gamma Core, by the way, for players who don't know, the Gamma Core is basically, think of a mighty laser pointer of death. You just fire a beam of energy at people, and it just constantly does damage. And again, personal preference with the melee weapon. The Dragon Nikana is personally my favorite melee weapon in the game as of late. But again, it can all be down to how you want to play her. You're going to probably be in Hysteria for a lot of your melee damage, but I think the only thing that I would not recommend on her would be something like a ceramic dagger. Given the fact that she has relatively low stats, she doesn't want to not do a lot of damage. So meaning, you're going to want something like the Dragon Nikana or the Nikana. You're going to want something like a Gram or something like a Scythe like Hate. You're going to want stuff like that. So this has been a little bit of a preview for Valkyr. Hopefully I've helped you learn more about her, what her skills do, possible loadout options. Maybe I've intrigued you to actually play her, because I don't see a lot of her anymore ever since the nerf, but I still think that she's a perfectly viable Warframe that has a lot of different uses. So this has been Svenrei. Hopefully I've taught you a little something, and I'll see you in the next video. Alright, well, take care.